to tell us who you are and why you're here. Shall we start with Denise? Hi, Denise.
Hi there, Yanis. So I'm Denise Harris, and I work for Sussex Community Foundation Trust full time. I'm part of the organisational development team there, part of HR, supporting services, teams, individuals, and so on in that organisation. I'm here because I'm also a part-time doctoral student with the School of Health Sciences. And I'm towards the end of my PhD journey.
Fantastic, thank you. And Abraham.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Anis, for having me. My name is Abraham Salim Kebede. I'm originally from Ethiopia. So I am an early stage researcher through Maria Skłodowska Reaction Innovate Training Network, and second year PhD student at University of Brighton School of Health Sciences. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. And we have Kay as well. Kay.
Yeah, Kay Aranda, and I'm in the School of Health Sciences. I'm a supervisor, and I am a postgraduate research coordinator, which means I get to talk to, meet, and then work with PhD students right from the beginning of their journey right through to the end.
Excellent, thank you so much. And this is very exciting for me because normally I talk alone about PhDs and try to give advice. So I'm going to ask each one of you. Tell me what made you want to do a PhD. and I'll start with Kay because I was asked I was asked this recently, so I had to think back. So Kay, what made you?
Mine was the classic. I absolutely loved my degree and my master's, and I was in full-time work, and I was becoming very unenthused about just working and not having space or time to think about that. I know that sounds very grand, but I also had a friend doing a PhD. And as usual, if your friend's doing a PhD, you think, oh, what's that? Let me ask them about it. Maybe I could do that. And there was also an issue that I was dealing with in teaching, because I was teaching community nurses. So there was something I was seeing in that environment that made me think, I wonder about that.
Brilliant.
But that's really what made me want to do it. I was curious about that topic. I felt there was something missing that I needed to understand more, I guess.
Brilliant. And Denise?
Okay, so I a little bit similar to Kay in a sense, in that I absolutely loved doing my masters. I really enjoyed it, and I got to the end and thought, yeah, I would like to do some more research. That was the part of my masters I particularly enjoyed. It took me quite a long time before I actually, there was a big gap then before I actually did start my PhD. But I was the topic I'm researching was something that I was really involved with, and it was something that was bothering me. It was really nagging at me,
yeah.
And I wanted to explore it. And I kind of thought, well, if I'm going to explore it, I want to do it properly.
So, so where I'm from, there is a huge shortage of PhDs and masters in the academia. So I always aspired to be an academician. So so I was hired as a graduate assistant in a university, and I was required to assist lecturers.
Yeah.
Who already have PhDs and masters. It was one of maybe an exciting thing to share with undergrad student, but I was also an undergraduate. I just had a degree, so I went for a master, and still I felt there was a huge gap and need for research methodology, strong methodological understanding in that sense when I was doing my master. So I wanted really to have the PhD. So the transformation was actually short. So I finished my master's, and it was within a year I started my PhD. Yeah.
So there was no fear, you just went straight on it. So which is the question I wanted to ask is, was there anywhere, and we got from Abraham, there was no fear because you went straight through, and that can happen. You go from your undergraduate to your postgraduate straight into a PhD. Kay and Denise, was there any concerns? And if there were, before you doing your PhD, if you could take yourself back in time, how did you overcome any of those?
It was just I was working.
Yeah.
And I had, I had a mortgage. I didn't have little ones to support or anything like that, but it just felt like this is going to be a big commitment. How am I going to manage that, both in time, and would my employer be willing to support me and fund me to do a PhD? So those were I wish I'd done a bit more research about that. I didn't at the time. I was very naive, actually. I didn't at the time understand the process of finding fully funded fellowships or scholarships. And what I was really doing was just reaching out very quickly to make a decision to do a PhD without having taken a bit more time to think about that. I mean, it did me good in the end, but I just, on reflection, because I'd done my first degree full time, and I know what a pleasure it is to study full time. There are challenges, but it's a very privileged opportunity to be fully immersed in your sort of world of intellectual thinking, and then to do a PhD part time. You have moments of that, but they're interspersed with a lot of stress from work, maybe, or a lot of concerns at home. And it was just finding ways to manage that, and there were different ways to manage that throughout. So it took me 6 years.
Denise, you are in a similar scenario, part time. How what are the major concerns?
I guess I think probably I didn't think about what the problems might be. So when I started my PhD, I am in a very fortunate position in that my organisation funds my PhD. So I didn't have any anxieties around that. And when I started, the role that I was in, I was able to carve out time within my role. Over the years, my role has changed, and that has become less possible. So it's become more challenging as the time has gone on to find the time. But I think that you can't see that far ahead. So when I started my PhD, I didn't anticipate some of the challenges, I think, that I did face as I went forward. There are probably some anxieties about, will I be able to do it? Am I clever enough? This seems like a really clever thing. But I think the passion for wanting to do it was so great, and the drive to do it was so great. And I think now, every now and again, especially at the moment, I'm thinking, what would have happened if I hadn't started this? How would I feel? And I think I would regret not doing it. I still feel that now.
Have you experienced any horror stories, any of you, not just from your experience, but from friends? And what advice would you give to try to avoid any such pitfalls?
I have been, I would say I've been extremely fortunate with my supervisors. One of my biggest challenges, they keep retiring.
Yeah.
Because I've been going so long. So I have quite a collection of supervisors who are no longer working full time. And I think that for me personally, I haven't experienced any challenges around that. I've had supervisors who have very different ideas, but I have found that they have worked together to support me.
Yes, so the project I'm involved in is composed of 15 different projects, and we are based in 5 different countries, majority in Scandinavian, and some of my supervisors are in Sweden, and the senior supervisor, who is also the principal investigator, is based at the University of Brighton. So so first, actually, when I started, I was actually worrying about the supervision expectations and all that, because I had previous experience when I did my master's. I did my master in Nigeria, and the senior supervisor who was very senior and very busy and was busy. So I handed my first draft to him. I went to the university and I went back to the hostel. So he called me and he asked me where am I supposed to sign. He didn't read it or anything. He didn't comment me. So he asked me where do I sign, just so that you just go through. So I was actually, I had that experience, negative experience, and when I came here, I was expecting that, but probably because I was fortunate, it was a project already, a design project I am in. So the supervisor is very dedicated and they are so enthusiastic and to help. They also understand we are at a very early stage in our career too. So we have very low research experience at the same time, even in the discipline. So they invest a lot. So that was a positive experience coming to the UK.
Brilliant. Okay, so you have two supervisors, Abraham, or three?
Three supervisors,
Three supervisors.
One from UK and two from Sweden. Yes.
Fantastic. Wow. Kay, have you had interdisciplinary projects yourself?
Not at the moment. I mean, I've worked on projects that have been in the past, and that was to do with resilience, and it was part of a bigger ESRC network led by Angie Hart. Okay. But I was just coming back to the supervisor's questions. The supervisor working on teams of 3 to support a doctoral student can be both a joy and a challenge, because there is that business of everyone's very busy, and as Denise knows, finding time and trying to fit everyone into a room, or into a space together. Because I do agree, Yanis, it's best to meet with people, everyone's there, can hear what's being said, and then come to some sort of common sort of ground on that. It's much harder if supervisors start to have separate meetings, unless it's agreed at the beginning that that's the best way to work, because maybe not every supervisor on the team needs to have the equivalent amount of time and input to support the work. It might be that they're on the team for really specific expertise and interest. So yeah, it's very rewarding, because you get to see how other people wish to supervise as well and support doctoral students. But I've always imagined that I have 2 supervisors myself. And I know that at times they were at odds over their views of particularly like knowledge or theory about a topic, and especially the theories that I wanted to use. And one was much more familiar with it than the other. So there used to be a little bit of, and I felt pulled, you feel like you're being sort of tugged at a bit. But it all worked out fine in the end, I should say. Yes, I try to avoid that in any supervisory team I'm in, especially if you're leading it, by sort of making the options available so that the student doesn't feel like they have to align themselves with the supervisor.
Yeah.
They don't have to agree, and it's building up the confidence to be able to do that, which is part of the job. It's part of what we aim to do.
One of the areas that people don't talk much about in the process of going through a PhD is the interview stage. When you've done all the work, you've done all the research, and then you're invited for an interview. So I want to ask Abraham and Denise about what was your process of preparing, and what advice would you give potential applicants when they preparing for an interview?
Yeah, so I had my interview maybe probably 2 years ago, so I remember. So the process of application was actually, I was looking for funded projects, like particularly funded projects. So when I saw this particular project, it was hosted by University of Brighton. So I applied to 2 specific projects. I was asked to write a project, a concept note, a kind of concept note. So I wrote that, and I was invited for an interview along other applicants, and it was very nerve-wracking. Probably, I think Kay was there too, I guess, when I had my interview, and it was a bit. It was on remote, like this one on MS Teams, and it was a bit. But what I did was I tried to research as much as possible on my supervisor, and as much as possible on the project I was going to join. So and on the methodology as much as I can. I had really no experience or not. It wasn't really much of an experience, even if it was very little. So that really helped me. So it was a bit worrying. At the same time, it was also unexciting, but it was a very supportive environment, and the supervisors were really calm, and they really encourage you to speak out and to communicate. Yes.
Brilliant. Say, Kay, what is it that you look in when you are in an interview panel? What is it that lights up the sky for you in an applicant? Is there some quality?
Yeah. I think you're looking for that passion that we've spoken about previously, that you will all recognise. The fact that you're highly motivated to want to research this topic. The fact that you've done some preparation before you come to interview, so you've got an overview of why this is an important area, why there's a gap or a problem in that area, or something needs exploring further through testing hypotheses. You know, you've got a real grasp of there's something here we still don't know, and it's that passion that you have for that really lights up the room, so to speak. The fact that you will be intellectually curious about that, so even when we ask questions, have you thought about this, have you thought about that, that you're not fixed to a particular set of ideas as such. You are open to thinking about other ways of looking at that, and you are able to see the potential for that or the benefit of that, that it's not, you know, a negative criticism of you at that point, at the very, very beginning of your journey, if you're successful, that it's a way in which we encourage you to think critically and academically. Because many of the topics that we come to research, we are so involved with, you know, both emotionally, politically, passionately, you know, it becomes who we are. So to receive comments on it can sometimes feel a little bit like, oh, I got that wrong. A bit like you said, Denise, is it a test? No, it shouldn't be. But it is about exploring that. And it's also looking to make sure that you're not over ambitious with your initial ideas, because we have that too sometimes in interview. The research project has to be feasible. Yep. It has to be realistically achievable within the timeline that you're asking for, whether that's part-time or full-time, and that you have a good idea maybe of what your own learning needs are, because you won't ever come to us at the beginning with everything worked out and already in place in terms of your skills, your knowledge, your experience. And you should have some idea of where you think you're strong, but maybe where you need to work and develop yourself further. And that often is around methods or methodology or processes of analysis, or, you know, refining your research question. So there's lots of different areas. So it's never that you're going to ever be the perfect applicant and interviewee, but it's about being open to any advice or suggestions that you receive. Yeah, and then there comes the funding question, doesn't there? You know, how you might finance your studies, and have you got the support of your family? Have you got the support of your workplace if you're coming from a workplace? Does your project fit in with their priorities, the bigger national picture of wherever you're doing your research? Because that speaks to an agenda that you can become part of as you finish, that you become a peer within a network of colleagues that are researching those areas. They have those fields, they wear those hats, that you can have that conversation and dialogue with as you study, but also as you come out the other end as a fully fledged researcher. That's what we're looking for.
That's a fantastic. You've been so gracious with your time and advice and sharing your experiences. And I just want to say thank you so much.